All right. Good morning, good evening. Welcome from around the world globally. We appreciate you taking time from your day or your evening or your morning, as the case may be, to join us here on Salesforce Bookshelf. Today, myself and my co host, Shalyn, are welcoming Heather Black. I was going to say CEO Supermoms on the screen, but really, um, her credentials and the way she has blazed her trail through the Salesforce and Trailblazer community is nothing short of spectacular. If you don't mind, I really want to brag on you for a moment, Heather.
Oh,
Um, Maybe people don't do that enough, and I'm going to give a brief overview of really all of your accomplishments, and then let you try to introduce yourself after all that flattery. But Heather is the CEO and founder of Supermoms, an 8-time certified consultant, but the author of Be a Super Salesforce Consultant. Really, though, it's her impact. That sounds all amazing, right? Writing a book, forming a company, but the impact that all of that has had is really more than 1,000 people have been trained and placed, supporting more than 200 companies globally with the work that Heather has brought together through Supermoms. And that's really impressive. If you think about the lives that have been impacted and changed, not just the 1,000 plus individuals themselves, but their family members and everything. It is really just an amazing impact, which basically tells you or makes you have an appreciation for why Salesforce bestowed the golden hoodie to Heather um, as an influential trailblazer in the ecosystem, and you'd not be surprised to hear that the accolades just go on from there. Actually, as one of the top most 100 influential women in technology. So, Heather, after all of that, would you like to introduce yourself?
yeah, but I'd like to say that it's not just me that creates this impact with Supermums, right? It's a family and a community, and both Shannon and yourself have been part of that community, haven't you? Of helping other people launch their career. And I couldn't do it without you, right? I mean, Shannon, you've been part of the Supermoms family. You started on one of our courses and became part of our team, and you've worked with us for many years, career coaching and helping women understand the opportunities available to them to launch their career. And Joseph, you've been a mentor
Yeah,
as
I
well for
have.
many years for Supermoms. So thank you to you guys, because actually all this journey of helping people relaunch their careers it's been a team effort. And I'm a one person. I can't achieve all of it by myself. So thank you to both of
You're
you for being
welcome.
part of the journey. And for anybody else listening that's been part of the Supermoms family, whether you've been a trainee or a support in the team as a mentor, as part of all of that, it makes a difference, doesn't it? But I think the passion that we all have collectively is about sharing and helping others and teaching others what we've learned, because that's why I love writing blogs every week and speaking at events like this. I love sharing what I've learned to help other people. That's what keeps me ticking over, to be honest, is sort of really sharing and, as I say, hearing back from people about how you're helping them. And with all the blogs and everything I wrote, that's what created the book. I actually went and spent 3 hours collating a lot of my blogs that I'd written, and I had 30,000 words in 3 hours. And so it was that easy to write a book, right? And then I did I had 10,000 from, other content I'd written around my training topics, and then other things that I added in. But also, we have a lot of sponsors that want to educate people. So they also contributed some chapters to the book equally. So it wasn't actually that hard to bring the book together, and it was another way of educating people alongside blogs that people see and then they drift off into the SEO ecosystem, and speaker opportunities which come and go, whereas a book felt sort of a tangible resource of collecting all that and sharing it. So I think we're very privileged in the Salesforce ecosystem. I'm one of many people that share knowledge and give back. I think that's one of the unique facets that we have of the Ohana, if you like. And we all want to see everybody be successful and pat everybody on the back when we see them achieve things. So I think we create that ripple effect, and other people see me do it, and then other people go and do it. So it's great to be here today. Thank you.
You're welcome. That ripple effect is exactly the same metaphor I use with some people, that be it mentoring in the trailblazer ecosystem, or where I work and mentoring the newer consultants. We all think about ourselves as even just a pebble, and we're dropping our pebble into the water. Eventually, there's enough ripples to move a boat. And when you think about that, like, I can't do it by myself, right? No, you can't. But if you think about the impact you have by collaborating and working together, several pebbles will create a large enough ripple that will eventually move a boat. So thank you for kicking us off with that reminder, and the community, and the give back, and helping other people lift themselves up. And I do want to point out, like you did say, moms, but you do help dads as well. I've helped mentor dads as well, those who are looking for that change in the ecosystems. Don't be fooled by it being called super moms. But all right, so we have a lot to cover. I feel like we've tried to narrow down the scope of the conversation with your book and your impact, and to a handful of questions. I think we got it down to maybe 6, 7, 8 questions or so, out of the many questions we could ask.
Bear in mind, I don't know what's coming right now, people.
Right? And then we've gone back and forth. We've gone back and forth on, do you share the questions in advance, and does the person have an opportunity to feel prepared and rehearsed, or do you get the natural candor of, you don't know what's going to happen? We're kind of going for this Danny Bonaducci, Kevin Matthews, WLUP, Chicago Loop FM radio vibe kind of thing, where it's unpredictable, right? I think, have you seen I can't remember the name of the book about Howard Stern, what it was called, something parts. And they were like, why do people listen to Howard Stern? And it's like, the haters listen to him more because they want to see what he'll say next. So that unpredictability is what we're aiming for. So thank you for being shocked, surprised, and a willing,
slightly nervous. So what's coming?
a willing victim. So we'll start easy with you. And we want to talk about your personal journey and super moms. Shelly, do you want to kick us off with some questions in that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I came into your sphere well into your career when you had already created Super Moms and really had so much impact already. But I'd like to kind of go back to the beginning and find out, what was that pivotal moment that really inspired you to change course on your career and get started as a Salesforce professional?
Okay, so I was running a non-profit organization that supported 18 to 30-year-olds into employment and starting up businesses. And I initially grew that from an idea as well. It's called Striding Out at the time. And as non-profit, came across the free licenses that Salesforce offered, and downloaded the licenses and didn't do anything with the system, quite frankly, because I didn't know what it was. Never used a CRM before. And it was only through seeing another non-profit and how they used it, I got that aha moment. And that's why I think it's so important to see demos and to talk to other people about, what is possible. And then you kind of get it and understand it. So that kind of kicked off my whole interest in Salesforce. And when I was running my organization, I implemented Salesforce. It helped me grow my nonprofit from 100K to 1.4 million in a year, went from 4 staff to 40 staff, because we're able to win a lot more contracts through having the CRM. It was quite significant. So obviously I fell in love with it, I skilled up in admin, advanced admin, and consultancy skills through taking Salesforce courses, and really fell in love with actually what the system could do. One, because it helped me with the business, and two, because I actually just enjoyed tinkering with the system and building it out. So when I was running that organization, it was largely funded through government contracts, and the funding streams changed in the UK because a new political party came in. And so I tried to make it work for a while, but it was very, very difficult. And so I was at the point where I had to pivot, and I was just about to have a family, get married, and we were moving out of the city. So I was like, what am I going to do that's more flexible and well paid? So that's when I sort of explored the different job roles. You know, I'd never heard of a business analyst before, never really understood what the job roles were in this industry. It was all completely new to me, but I did the research and I understood it, and I realized actually I had a lot of transferable skills. But I also invested in upskilling around business analysis, change management, and agile project management alongside the technical skills. So I pivoted to be that freelance Salesforce consultant, and worked 3 days a week with newborn, living by the sea, working virtually because my daughter would only have breast milk in the first year. She was not having bottles. And I, after 4 years, realized that other people could do this too, which is where the sort of the appetite for Supermums came from. But I was very successful at generating work, and that's where I had to sort of decide, well, do I continue to be freelance or do I grow a consultancy? So that then led me on a journey of bringing other team members in and building a consultancy, which we took up to 20 staff at the time. And so, yeah, so that was my journey really, and how I got started. Accidental admin, I think, like many people.
Sean? Yeah. Anything more to explore there?
No, I think it's a great lesson around, sometimes it's just being open and looking to, I loved what you said around you skilled up, you like tinkering with it. Like you discovered the power of Salesforce. It wasn't necessarily, I meant to get into tech or build this career, but just that you took those opportunities and then you invested. I think one of the important lessons that I have learned from you and really have watched transform many lives is that investment of time and resources and heart, and making some sacrifices for a season to really learn and pivot that.
Awesome. Well, I want to move into what we call segment 2 and focus on the book, the insights and some of the best practices, Heather. Mm-hmm. We have a handful of questions here, and I got caught up in your book again this morning, just before the podcast, refreshing myself with some of the material. But what would you feel are your top 3 takeaways from your book as the author? What do you think are the highlights, if you could narrow it down to 3, right? It's your baby, your book. What are the top 3 takeaways for people?
Yeah, great question. Okay. So I think the fact that you've got a checklist of the A to Z guide of how to lead a project, I feel quite proud that I've managed to get a chronological order of leading a Salesforce project through the A to Z. And I forgot a couple of letters out of that. I was like, I can't even spell the alphabet anymore. So I had to come up with the X-ray. I'd miss out X and something else. And I was like, oh God, how did I do that? Anyway, so I'm quite proud that actually the A to Z is the chronological order. I've managed to sort of space it out. And I felt, I felt really delighted with the feedback I've got from people who are very seasoned professionals, have been around a long time and gone, this is a really useful checklist to have, and they've found value in the book. So it's not just for newbies. And I think, the way that I've structured myself, and I suppose my second tip is in the book, there's a lot of free downloads. And part of that is tools and templates that I share as part of my consultancy skills course, but are freebies on our website. And I think, having a checklist, having tools and templates for each of those parts of the project is the best way to set yourself up for success. So I think it's 1, having an A to Z strategy of how you manage a project, 2, having tools and templates of how you then manage parts of those projects, I think are the key things. And the whole book is actually focused around what I call the hat trick skills. And again, it's meant to be, but the ABC is the agile project management, the business analysis and change management, and the DevOps. I mean, you can't really make that up, quite frankly, but the whole book kind of focuses on those key skills, because I don't focus on technical skill set in the book. I focus on the disciplines and the elements that relate to agile project management, business analysis, and change management in the whole A to Z sort of chapter. So the fact that it starts with those three is, I think, is key. So it's upskilling in those areas. I think it's very hard to lead Salesforce projects if you're not skilled and disciplined around those three areas, and they all interlink together. You know, you can't have one without the other. You need that blend, because they're so interdependent on each other to do a good job.
Yeah, your spot, like, you and I are kindred spirits in that regard. You can teach anybody technical skills, right? There's Trailhead and a wealth of resources and courses and whatnot, like Supermoms and other resources. We won't plug them here. We'll focus on you today. But the other skills about how to be a consultant, the soft skills about determination and how to do research, accountability, empowerment, those are other things that, you know, they take experience to build, right? And how does someone conceptualize those and take them away? But how do they open their eyes past the blinders of, I can't just sit down and crank out 20 certifications in 365 days and be an expert. That's not reality. If you don't couple that with consulting skills and soft skills, and that comes from experience, you know, and the highlight of that is often missed. So I appreciate that hat trick concept that you're driving home here with.
I think the other thing to add in there also is a lot of these tools and templates I couldn't have designed up front, but having overseen 700 projects, you then realized where all the pain points were, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, if you learn from people like myself and like yourself, Joseph, where you know you're learning from seasoned professionals, you can mine the gap early on. Because you didn't know this stuff when you start out.
Yeah, it's sometimes more important. Like we're working on our templates at Astound Digital now as we evolve the practice. And there's a section in one of the TDDs, the technical design documents, around what is out of scope. And it's sometimes even more important to declare with a client or customer what you're not doing as it is what you are doing, right?
Absolutely.
And that expectations are a huge part of delivery, right? Establishing, is everybody got the same expectations, the same responsibilities? What are good acceptance criteria? All of those mechanics of executing a project do come from learning the hard way, right? You know, I one of my favorite I like to share, I'm able to own, is in my very first Service Cloud implementation we worked on at a company, and I was a customer, so it was my implementation, and I did not like the welcome to the community email that was not formatted. And I'm like, oh my God, that cannot go out. I'm like, we need to modify it. We need to put our logo in it. We need to have like our motto. Like, let's reformat the template while we're going live that weekend during the rollout.
Wow.
And it was pretty. It was a beautiful email. One of the most spectacular, beautifully written emails that you would have ever seen in your whole life, with no link to the community. So, you know, nothing like sending an email to 20,000 customers and say, log in here, with no, you know, so you learn, you know, you live and you learn. But that might be a good question for like, what are the common mistakes that a company makes when rolling out Salesforce, and how do you feel they can be avoided?
Well, that goes back to one of those tools, right? So in the risk assessment chapter, I bottled it down to like 20 risks in the end, which became part of a risk mitigation spreadsheet. So I analysed where every project over the 700, where they'd typically gone wrong. And, there was common trends. And actually a lot of them were, again, around the soft skills. It was around the agile project management, the business analysis piece, it's a change management piece. And so I put together, and this wasn't right, it wasn't in the right at the end of consulting, but it was kind of put in the later stages of going, well, actually, where are the trends here? So created the risk mitigation spreadsheet with the common areas for us to educate the client on, most importantly, because actually you, as part of any project management, you should do risk mitigation with the client and explain to them where the risks are on the project, because they don't know if they've never done this before. And so we introduced that risk mitigation framework actually at the pre-sale stage as part of the sales cycle, because then we can actually understand whether we even want the project or not and how bought in they are before you've even sold it, right? And so actually we started asking some of these questions early on and then having it as part of the kickoff meeting too.
You mean you can't fire a client?
You mean you can decide not to work with one? Yeah.
But can you fire them?
You fire them. So yeah, well, we've had, again, we've
Yeah.
all got those stories, right, where you've aligned on something, or you think you've all aligned, and then actually they sort of turn it around, and because they suddenly run out of budget, and all of a sudden they want to come up with other reasons why you should keep working on it. So the problem is every project will go through a grief cycle. There will always be a challenge on every project, and there's no way around that, because everybody's got, there's so many different variables, so many different people in there. And that's part of the thing, is navigating these different stakeholders, their emotions, their buy-ins to it. Like, it fascinates me. The whole change management piece is fascinating. And, but if you're aware of those risks and you've flagged them up with the client first, and you've seen their appetite and understanding of those, one, you've got it all written down that, there's going to be risks here if X, Y, Z happens. So I think, it's really important that you mind the gap, and the A to Z guide in the book really helps mitigate those risks.
Yeah. Emotions, right? You mentioned emotions. Like, we are dealing with people, right? And that, you watch Survivor?
No.
No?
Oh, sorry.
This is going to be a plug for Survivor. Survivor is great. Before I became a technologist, or actually an accountant, believe it or not, my degree is in accounting. Thank God I found Salesforce. But before I went to study accounting, I was studying sociology and communication. And if I thought I could make a living that way, maybe I would not have chosen a practical skill like accounting for a profession. But you're right about, there is a human dynamic, there is emotion, that people are attached to their deliverable and their work product, and what they feel they're messaging to you, and where do they feel understood, and that they personalize it. And where do you learn how to depersonalize a project from, well, this is my deliverable, this is what I'm creating. Where do I see the end of myself, the person, and the start of the project, and how do they mix together? So emotions do run high, especially on things where there's a lot of money involved, a deadline. How visible is it? What did we commit to? Who's responsible for the outcome of the success? And human nature is that we all struggle with a battle of that demon on our shoulder called ego, right? And that's hard to manage. And how do you talk about that truthfully within a project? How have you, I'm asking, that's the formulation of a question for you. How have you come to surface emotions and balancing the team dynamic and delivering 700 projects. Because I imagine the number of people you've interacted with is exponential from there, right? And that's a lot of people to balance. How do
It
you go
is.
about doing it?
Yeah. Well, so I think that there's two things that come to mind with this. I think first is, I realized I needed to train up in change management. I didn't even know change management existed before I'd done this workshop, but I was sat in I was early days consulting, sat with a senior management team, and I was early 30s, right? And they were like 50s at this point. So I felt quite privileged to be in this situation where I'm helping them redesign their processes and organization. But there was a guy in the room that was just heckling everything and kept, with every positive sort of process conversation would just bring it down, because he'd had very negative experiences of a CRM in another role and responsibility. Now, the reality of this organization was that it needed Salesforce for compliance requirements to win contracts. So it was fundamental that they were going to have a CRM, that it was going to happen regardless. But every point of the conversation, he would just kept pulling it down, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to facilitate this. I needed some tools in my toolbox, which led me to go on this change management course. So that's where I realized that not everybody's going to be happy, right? You kind of have this, well, Salesforce is going to, my mantra, and I've put this in the book, is I'm here to make you happier. That's what I say at the beginning of every design workshop or kickoff, is ultimately I want to walk away and you be happier with the way that you work, with your performance as an organization, how you treat customers. That's my job. And the fact that somebody is in the room, like, not being happy, like, kind of goes, oh, like, what do I do? And when I learn about change management, typically you put stakeholders in 4 boxes. So you've got the champions, who are going to be your ones that are really excited, maybe use Salesforce before, feel like it's going to change their life. And then you've got 3 other pools in there. So you've got sleepers, who basically just want to ignore that it's even happening. You've got those that are blockers, that don't want it to happen, like that guy, for example. And so you've kind of got these different people and different stakeholders. So you've got to understand that. And then you've got to work out the different motivational strategy to get them over the line. And so I talk about, again, there's 4 different motivational strategies you can have. And the one that you choose will depend on the culture of the organization, who those different stakeholders are, and how you bring them on this journey with you. So even the way that you deliver a business analysis workshop, you will adopt and blend your style and approach and your language and your terminology based on the stakeholders, their emotions, where they sit. And so that's why, I suppose I became more intuitive to things. But as my role changed, because I've worn every hat. I've been the BA, the consultant, the admin, within a consultancy, I've adopted, I suppose, as I've grown. And then obviously being the CEO of a consultancy, I had to resolve a lot of issues, because it would only come to me if there was an issue, right? And then I'm like, okay, right, we need to dive in. But I actually took quite a pride in resolving issues with customers, and sort of going and digging into, where did this go wrong? What hasn't been done? And, quite often it's something that perhaps our consultants hadn't done aligned to the way that, aligned to the best practice of business analysis project management, where we accept responsibility, or it's something on their side where they hadn't understood and taken ownership of something as well. And I always took pride in coming out of those with a positive outcome to get something over the line. Not every project goes smoothly, but you've got to have those skill sets to come out with a positive resolution, a positive outcome for customers, which I'd always felt like, would inevitably achieve. And that's why we had a 60% repeat and referral rate. We had on average 2 projects from every client, and we won the EMEA Partner of the Year award in the last year I was running it. So I take pride that we did a good job, but it's knowing how to have those conversations, understanding that landscape. And my background was business coaching, and I do believe coaching skills give you a lot of skills in your toolbox to help understand how to build those relationships with people.
Yeah, it's a team sport in implementation, right? So
It is.
Coaching draws a lot of analogies there. Shellen, what were some of the things that you wanted to ask about the insights and best practices?
Yeah, one of the things I love about the way that you wrote the book, being an A to Z guide, is it's simple to read and it's just so power packed. So you took the many hundreds of hours and consolidated it into something that's easier to read and understand, those essential downloads that people can just own and run with, which is so valuable. And I love the story you just shared about that. Being somebody that's maybe younger, starting out, working with leaders, it's essential to have leadership and influence over a variety of people. And being able to establish trust and credibility is such a key part of that. What advice do you have about how to really establish trust and credibility in short order and at the front end of the process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is that professional approach to projects. It is about having the tools and templates, communication strategies to build that trust and rapport. Because, as I say, when I was in my 30s and starting out, to be in a room with a senior management team in their 50s of quite a large, sizable organization, and then to invest, there's a massive privilege there. And I would have other senior leaders like just invest and sort of have those one-to-one conversations with me, and just felt very lucky to be in that situation. But they obviously trusted me because I presented a professional approach to my projects. So it's really, really important not to be a rookie, or a cowboy, in that you're just going in, you're just kind of, asking random questions. Like, you don't want to be in that space. And that's how I felt right initially, which is why then I invested all in this additional training for myself. So I don't really know. I've done my admin course. I don't really know what I'm doing in terms of presenting it back, but I'm charging £400 day rates. And I realized, if I'm charging £400 day rates, my training I invested was like £11,000 in those additional training courses. You don't have to invest that. We at Supermums now, I deliver a consultancy skills course, which is 1.5K, but it combines all those skill sets. So there's cheaper ways to learn those skills now. But, for me, 11 grand was, I'm earning £400 day rates. So that's 22 days, right, of work. But it's worth it if I feel better in myself and I'm delivering in a professional approach. It makes financial sense for me to do it. I don't want to be what I feel like a fraud, right? That's my own inner confidence and my, I don't have that gremlin on my shoulder feeling like I'm not good enough. So I think it's really important to invest in yourself, to feel good, show up well, and people will trust you regardless of your age, your background. It's about the skills you have in your toolbox.
And I think this day and age, access to mentors, whether they know they're your mentor or not, is so accessible with books and courses, and just access to, you don't have to wait so long to be able to upskill and really bring the best thinking from those in the business from all around the world.
Absolutely.
So the thing you hit on the toolbox, and you've talked about the privilege of working with executives as well, right? I do recall one particular mentee that I had to coach through Supermoms, who was a teacher in Georgia. And I made the analogy to him that his parents are his stakeholders and his students are his project team and or the people at the client implementing the project. So he's got a life skill that he can take from his old profession and apply to consulting around crafting his message to an audience, how he understands that he's got to get these kids to do something and get a project over the line, their homework, at the pleasure of the parents who want their children to succeed, right? But how, let's talk about that from a implementation perspective and consulting, the tools you said. How do you what's your recommendation around establishing trust and credibility and buy-in with the stakeholders who manage the initiatives and the vision for the project. You talked about the 4 buckets, but what does an individual do to establish that trust from your perspective?
I think it's not to shy away from having that relationship and conversation with the senior management team. So a centre of excellence needs to be set up where you've got the senior managers in a room, and quite often that will get missed, right? You know, you'll go straight into a design workshop and be talking to a team about what their sales team need. What you need to do is establish that centre of excellence with senior leaders in the room, build the trust with them, understand their business vision, their business purpose, their pain points, help them to understand what Salesforce can do for their different teams and departments. Because quite often I was faced with, like, the fundraising team would bring me in, but the other teams didn't know what Salesforce was or what it could do. So you're missing a trick. They're missing that big piece and that understanding. And that's where we'd end up rolling Salesforce out to different teams and departments. So it's about helping them understand what's the executive sponsor's role? What do they need to do? What is the centre of excellence? Making sure they've got the governance in place and the management to manage the system, how they support the users. So if you're building rapport with the senior leaders, getting them all on board, you need to help them understand what they need to do to make this a success, and get them all in a room and create a framework and it's not a one-off meeting, it's creating that governance structure that will continue beyond the life of your role as a consultant. And they know how to hold the baby. And I always talk about it's like a baby, right? You're giving them a baby. They need to know how to be parents of that baby. They've never done this before. It's like walking out of a hospital and nobody gives you any blooming instructions. And then they're like, can you take it back? Because I don't know what I'm doing. That's what I say all the time. So you've got to train them on how to be parents of their new baby, and that's our job.
Yeah. New baby. I'm gonna take that analogy though, and I'll morph it a little bit when I reshare it to be like, it's like you bought a brand new puppy. Right? So, so I don't have to explain the birds and the bees and how I want to avoid that conversation. I think the final section, I think it's an appropriate kind of day, actually, for those of you listening online in Spotify and Apple to our podcast later. We're actually recording today's episode as a coincidence. It was not planned on Juneteenth here in the United States, which is a particularly significant holiday for our culture here in America. And so the last section I felt from that I want to talk to you about today is the landscape of diversity and inclusion evolving in the tech space, and how you envision supermoms continuing to play a role in that transformation, and including some of the communities that don't necessarily receive as much respect or credibility that they rightfully deserve in the ecosystem. Salesforce is a bit different, promotes equality and being that, but how do you see that landscape, especially from an international perspective?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, over 75% of our audience is from diverse communities across the world. I mean, we went accidentally global with Supermoms because it was a virtual training program. People could join it from all over the world, and actually we've got people join from all different countries. A third of our trainees are in the USA, the rest are across EMEA. But also we've had a lot of people that move locations. So we've got a lot of people in the UK that actually aren't native English. They've come over from India or from Eastern Europe, or other countries, and speak multiple languages. So we've got a very rich tapestry of diverse communities within Supermoms. And we've just launched, actually, we've got a mapping tool through GridMate. where we can see where everybody is on a map, which is super exciting. And we're going to start really connecting people into local people, because there's even people on the same street and they probably wouldn't even know it. It's fascinating. I could spend hours looking at this map. But we're connecting people in locally and geographically to each other. And I think it's going back to your point, Joseph. It's really important that we connect people of like communities within the tech sector, and they then, going back to your ripple, it's quite nice to come back to that ripple effect, right? All of these people are pebbles, and we want to empower them to tell other people in their community about it, because somebody who's from the Indian community will talk to other women who've come from India and share their story. And we're looking to really, the next part of our journey at Supermums is we're really looking to empower people within these communities who've shared this journey to share their stories in their local communities, to bring more people into the sector. And so I think for anybody listening, please do spread the word, share your story, share your journey with other people in your local community. If they're looking to relaunch their career, then invite them to become part of Supermums, because we all have to be ripples, and actually we listen to people within our local communities and people we know and feel and trust. Otherwise people think it's a scam. I can't really earn that much. Could I really do this? I spend a lot of time, speaking on podcasts where, some people, obviously their natural reaction will be fear and concern, and like they don't trust that it's possible for them. So this word of mouth and this reassurance, 60% of people that come to us actually at Supermums is through referral and recommendation, and that's because they've got somebody they've spoken to that they trust. So I think we all have a responsibility to be an ambassador, all have a responsibility to share stories through blogs, through podcasts, to inspire other people in their community to make the difference. So yes, we welcome anybody that wants to share any, as they do, spread the word through us about Supermums and any other mediums and communities that are relevant.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Thank you for helping reinforce that message. That's part of the mission that we had, Shalyn and I had, with this just being another vehicle for expanding the community, evangelizing and getting the word out, how to help. Chris Duarte, I met her very early, very, 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 very early in the Trailhead Games at Dreamforce 2015, when there were 14 modules or badges on Trailhead. I've lost track of how many there are now. But I've been at it a long time. I'm old.
Trailhead didn't exist when we started out, right, Jason?
It did not. It did not. It did not exist when we started out.
But Supermums didn't exist. Well, sorry, Trailhead didn't exist when I launched Supermums. The only way you could train was in a 5-day classroom in London or in person, right? Which is why I launched Supermums as a revolutionary way of learning virtually. So yeah, we've been around.
We've been around, and people don't remember that time. I actually have a friend. I'll say a friend now. She's a former colleague, but a friend who literally has this trophy on her desk because she was one of the first 500 certified Salesforce admins.
Oh wow!
And that's anyhow. So when you think about that, right? It kind of brings me to the last question of the day around the longevity of your career. And I love music, so I'm gonna say, like Bob Seger said, I wish I knew now what I didn't know then, right? Or I wish I knew then what I didn't know now. Something like that. I'm gonna look up the Bob Seger lyric in a minute. But what I'm driving at here is, what is the one thing that you know now that you did wish you knew earlier in your career?
Good question. I think one thing that I'm sort of focusing on is your zone of genius, and that's my Z in the book, right? It's about knowing where you have your strengths and your niche. And actually, we were talking about how to become a successful self-employed consultant on a webinar I was running earlier in the day, and the big message from that was to find your niche and to know where your strengths are. And I think when you're early on in your career, you kind of explore everything, and there's nothing wrong with exploring different things, but actually it was a tool that I did called talent dynamics, which helped me understand where my zone of genius was. And that was a pivotal light bulb moment for me of like going, oh, okay, that's where I'm good at. I don't need to be good at all of this other stuff, and I don't need to beat myself up about those things not being my areas of strength. And about being in a team, whether you're running your own company or working in a company, knowing where you really add value and everybody appreciating the value that you bring, and equally everybody knows the value everybody else brings, and you work really well as a team collectively because you're all lifting each other up around your zones of genius. And I think, I wish I'd known that earlier. You always wish you'd known that earlier, but I think that's where I encourage people to get to is shine bright. I always talk about shining bright as well. You want to shine bright in your zone of genius, to find out your niche, to know where your strengths are. And, maybe I would have made different decisions at different points had I really focused in on that earlier. But it stood me in good stead. The decisions I have made and the success I had is around having niches and being focused on things. So yes, I think that's one thing I'd encourage people to take away is, just find your zone of genius, know and understand yourself and where you really thrive and shine.
Yeah, I think that is such brilliant advice. And this Salesforce community is the perfect place to be able to explore and plug in and listen and learn, because sometimes it takes a while to figure out what that zone of genius is and how it would translate into the Salesforce world. And I think it's special. It's special in this community for sure. And Heather, thank you so much for joining us today. It's just such a privilege, and your book is spectacular. To share anything that you'd like about kind of what's coming up in your world or with Supermoms, and those who are listening and watching, where they can best connect with you and the Supermoms community.
Oh, thank you. Absolutely. So you can find out more about Supermoms at supermoms.org. And it is spelled with a super mum, but obviously anybody can visit it from across the world. On there, you'll find out more about our training, our recruitment services, how you can sponsor super mums. Obviously, spread the word if you know people that are looking to upskill and train, or for yourself. There's a range of training courses from our admin and consultancy skills and marketing cloud on there, so you can find out more, get involved in the community. You can buy the book from there as well. Again, that's available from Amazon store, so you can just Google it on Amazon if you like. So become a Super Salesforce Consultant. There's some lovely reviews on there as well that you can read. So yeah, if we can help you with your career or somebody just please spread the word. That'd be brilliant. And that's what we're all about at Supermoms, is inspiring and helping people to accelerate and launch their career successfully.
Okay, and your Twitter handle is, X handle is?
Twitter handle Supermoms Global. Supermoms Global is actually the key global handle across LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Yeah.
Okay, and thank you very much for sharing your insights and taking the time with us today. I appreciate your generosity in providing your time to our group or our podcast so that we can evangelize and amplify the message on supporting one another in the consultant space for Salesforce ecosystem. Thank you again. Shalene, thank you for helping bring us all together and getting the invites out. We do have another episode planned for July 24th. Please be sure to follow myself and Shalene on LinkedIn. You'll see that. It'll be announced in the next day or so. There's also a blog in our time off between episodes. We will be publishing blogs or synopsises of the first three podcasts that we've had with our guests. Heather, thank you for helping us launch the podcast and getting to a global audience. And everybody, have a great day, good evening, good afternoon. Enjoy your day wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.